Hey guys, welcome to Anatomy Lessons from the Masters, in this case the Schiele module. Um, I've chosen Schiele for a reason, and I've structured the course in this way for a reason, going from Frazetta to Raphael to Schiele to Rubens, basically oscillating or moving between artists who used anatomy in, let's say, a pretty accurate way and artists who used it or who sacrificed it for just raw power, which I'm saying is where Frazetta and Schiele sit. But not in the same way. Like, I feel like Schiele has a stronger understanding of the base anatomical concepts than Frazetta did. So he's using it more and he's breaking it more, right? And I don't think he could get away with breaking it this much without having the knowledge that he had. I remember going to an exhibition that was Schiele and Tracy Emin side by side sort of thing, and the exhibition was talking about the similarities between the two, and I sort of found myself strongly disagreeing on most fronts with that because I think if you don't really understand drawing, then you can look at them both and go, yeah, they both use wobbly lines in their drawings and they're both quite sexual in the way that they handle the human body, but that's it. And with Schiele, it's not wobbly lines. It's not, what I don't mean to do is to denigrate Tracy Emin, but rather to elevate Schiele, whose level was just incredibly high, especially for someone who died so young. So anyway, let me talk a bit about what I mean, and hopefully it'll start to become clear. So as I break down these various drawings, and here I've got a bunch of them just because I'm a fan and I couldn't decide between them, but I think what's interesting to observe is well, two things, many things, right? But we'll use two things as our entry point. One is the posing, which, especially after having looked at Raphael and seeing quite fairly classical posing, seeing Schiele just start to break that, and you see the arms kind of here unified as just a horizontal line that is then mirrored in the leg through there. You see a lot of this sort of horizontals and verticals, very unnatural movements, just kind of breaking their way out of the body, and he kind of he will also find hard lines in the body, but then big rhythms that move through the body, and so it's a very kind of often a very staccato effect. There's one or two drawings that I'm going to bring your attention to that are quite surprising, because it's him actually using curvaceous forms, and you suddenly go, oh yeah, that works, but it's not what I was expecting of him. You kind of, this, what we're looking at here is kind of, yeah, let's say more in the realms of what you would expect. And the other thing that I think is really interesting to focus on is his handling of the bone, because the bone sets up the pose anyway, right? The bone sets up the big movements, and whenever I'm teaching anatomy, I'm saying to you guys, go for the bone first. And here you can see this, right? So in the hips, for example, I would be saying to you, look for the aces through there, and like we'll see this time and time again. Schiele going, yeah, aces really important, because that sets up the structure of the hips, and so let's find that hard bony form, that you can kind of, so you have this movement that just comes bonk down and then bounce back off of that. He's really dealing with things in quite a hard, abrupt manner, and same as we get to knee, bonk, we bounce outwards, and that's the setting up of our movement outwards again is defined by bone. I mean, so this is certainly bone through here. This is going to be the tibia going through there. That's probably an indication of the tibial tuberosity through there. The nose, the bump on the front of the tibia where the quadriceps is going to. And then normally you would say, look, on the inside, that's going to be soft and rounded. That's going to be the form of the vastus medialis through there. But in this case, bong, he's just conceiving of the knee joint as pretty much a box, right? And so just finding the corners of the box in a really hard and sharp way. And a box is a pretty good way to look at the knee joints. And then we zoom right the way up here, you can see the bottom of the 10th rib. Again, not a true bony landmark because it's covered by the obliques, but still a very, very important bit of bone to look through, to look for. Interestingly, you see how he's used the color break there to set up to give an indication of the angle break. So if we believe that angle break, it is a little bit high compared to that one on the other side, but it doesn't really matter. And I'm not one to talk much about color coming from a sculpting background, but I think there are certainly things that we can talk about in some of the drawings here, because Schiele uses color in a way that kind of syncs in pretty well with the anatomy. But anyway, we'll look at that in another drawing. So here we've got the rib cage, and you can see him finding the individual ribs through here, and you can see here he's just used some lines to indicate that. I do believe that would be ribs rather than obliques in this case, just looking at the body type of the model. And then here, this is bang, that's the scapula really sticking out through there. You see he has a real affinity for what happens when you start to raise or really move an arm away from the body, like in this case pulling it across there, because the side of the body really comes to life, and it's a movement that I'm a big fan of as well, because you just have so many things happening through there. So here he's setting up this big bumpy movement. You see that little bump at the top? That's probably going to be the clavicle, right? Because then you have the clavicle drops down to the acromion, which isn't really suggested here, and then this is he doesn't really work with big deltoids. What he likes to do is strip back the deltoids, and then you see the rounded form of the humerus underneath, which is sharper, and that's the movement that he prefers. And then you're coming down here, and he's pretty much stripping away any movement that you might see of the teres major or the latissimus, and just going bang, right, okay, there's some hard bone through there. Now, all of these things are not accidents, right? It's all he's using a very profound sense of anatomy and a model, and meeting those two things in the way that he, using his understanding of anatomy to guide the model, his understanding of anatomy, design, and storytelling, and allowing those things to meet. And that's my objection with the comparison with Tracy Emin, because her entry point is very different, and the comparisons fall very short unless you're just going, the lines are kind of wobbly, and that's really not what we're seeing through here at all. Through here, like this curvature, for example, this line just by itself, it's very well observed. It really is. Like, so this kind of S curve that you have, that comes from the pectorals, right? The pectorals by their nature have that, because the top portion of the pectorals is coming down low on the humerus, the bottom portion is coming high. So where those two things meet, you're going to get a curve through there, right? So that will set up what either a C curve or more likely an S curve, which is there. So you have the top portions pushing out further, the bottom portions going inwards, and that starts to set up that rhythm through there. So take a look for that. You'll see it more strongly every time the arm is extended, and I would say that specific movement is pretty indicative of an outstretched arm. So, like, yeah, if I was going to convey the story of an outstretched arm, maybe I would choose just to do that, right? And that's what Schiele's done. But then, if we ignore the hair through here, we can go look at that line through there and look at the color change, right? So this orange is telling us about a different form to that. Very, very relevant, because this is the rib cage, boom, diving back in through here, and this is the latissimus coming up to grab hold of the humerus, and the teres major as well, right? So he's not losing the skeletal form through there, and he's giving us a clear indication of what is rib cage and what isn't. Again, none of this stuff that we're going to look at is going to be even remotely accidental.